A Navajo family confronts an ancient shapeshifter prowling their Arizona homestead, forcing them to seek help from a medicine man. The high desert of northeastern Arizona stretches endlessly beneath a sky so vast it seems to swallow the earth whole. Here, among the red rock formations and twisted juniper trees, the Yazzie family has lived for 3 generations on land that borders the Navajo Nation. Their modest ranch house sits isolated, miles from the nearest neighbor, surrounded by scrubland where cattle graze and coyotes call to one another under moonlit skies. It is a place of profound beauty and equally profound silence, where the wind carries stories older than memory itself. In the summer of 1997, this silence becomes something else entirely. Something watching, something waiting. Thomas Yazzie, a 42-year-old ranch hand, lives here with his wife Patricia and their 2 teenage children, Daniel and Sarah. Their life follows the rhythms of the land, tending livestock, maintaining fences, making the occasional trip into Chinnell for supplies. Thomas learned ranching from his father, who learned it from his father before him. They are people connected to this place through bloodline and tradition, respectful of both the visible world and the unseen one that exists alongside it. The first incident occurs on a Thursday evening in late June. Daniel, 17 years old and responsible for checking the cattle each night, returns to the house 20 minutes earlier than usual. His face carries an expression his mother has never seen before, a mixture of confusion and primal fear that makes her stomach tighten. He tells his parents that something was watching him from the ridgeline to the north, something that moved on 4 legs but seemed wrong somehow, its proportions disturbing in ways he struggles to articulate. When his father asks if it was a coyote or perhaps a stray dog, Daniel shakes his head. He knows the animals of this desert. This was something different. Thomas dismisses the incident, attributing it to failing light and an overactive imagination. But 3 nights later, he encounters it himself. He is walking between the barn and the house when movement catches his peripheral vision. Standing approximately 50 yards away, illuminated by the pale light of a half-moon, is a figure. At first glance, it appears to be a coyote, but as Thomas's eyes adjust, the wrongness Daniel described becomes horrifyingly clear. The creature is too large, its limbs too long. It stands with an unnatural stillness, head turned directly toward him. Then it rises onto its hind legs in a fluid, impossible motion, standing upright like a human, but maintaining that animal quality that makes Thomas's skin crawl. For perhaps 10 seconds, they regard one another. Then the creature drops back to all 4s and vanishes into the darkness with supernatural speed, leaving no sound of retreat. Thomas does not sleep that night. He knows what he has seen, though speaking the name aloud goes against everything he was taught. Among traditional Navajo people, even uttering the word for such beings invites danger, attracts their attention. But Patricia sees the knowledge in his eyes when he finally comes to bed at dawn, and she understands without words being spoken. A Yi-Naldlusha has come to their land, a skinwalker. The encounters escalate with disturbing frequency over the following weeks. The creature appears near the house almost nightly, sometimes on 2 legs, sometimes on 4. It circles the property with clear intent, as if establishing territory or claiming dominion. The family's dogs, usually vocal guardians, refuse to bark at it. Instead, they whimper and hide beneath the porch, trembling with instinctive terror. The cattle become agitated, bunching together in tight groups and refusing to graze in certain areas. Sarah reports seeing a figure pressed against her bedroom window one night, a face that resembled a human skull stretched over with leathery skin, eyes reflecting light like an animal's. Thomas considers going to the tribal police, but what would he report? How does one file an official complaint against something that exists between worlds, something that appears in Navajo tradition but not in modern law enforcement manuals? He and Patricia discuss leaving, packing up, and abandoning the ranch their family has maintained for decades, but pride and practicality both argue against it. This is their home, their livelihood. Where would they go? It is Patricia's grandmother, 86-year-old Mitso, who provides the answer. When Patricia finally breaks her silence and describes what is happening, Mee listens without interruption, her weathered face grave. She tells them they must seek help from someone who walks the traditional path, someone with the knowledge and power to confront such entities. She gives them a name, Henry Goldtooth, a medicine man who lives near Window Rock, respected among the Dene people for his understanding of both healing and protection ceremonies. Thomas drives the 3 hours to Window Rock on a scorching July afternoon. He finds Henry Goldtooth outside a small house painted turquoise blue, tending a garden of traditional medicinal plants. Henry is perhaps 70 years old, lean and weathered, with silver hair worn long and secured with red cloth. When Thomas explains why he has come, speaking carefully around direct names and descriptions, Henry nods as though he has heard similar stories before. He agrees to come to the ranch the following evening. Henry arrives at dusk, carrying a worn leather bag and accompanied by a younger man he introduces as his nephew, James, who is learning the traditional ways. Henry walks the perimeter of the property, pausing frequently to examine the ground, the air, the quality of light in certain areas. He identifies the places where the entity has been strongest, points where its presence has left impressions visible only to those trained to see them. At the northwestern corner of the property, near a cluster of large rocks, he stops for a long time, studying something the Yazzie family cannot perceive. That night, Henry performs a protection ceremony. He creates a sand painting in the traditional style, using colored sand to depict the holy people and the sacred mountains. He sings prayers that have been passed down through countless generations, his voice rising and falling in patterns that seem to resonate with the desert itself. He prepares a mixture of herbs and blessed water, which he uses to mark the doors and windows of the house with symbols of protection. He instructs the family to burn cedar and sage, to maintain watchfulness, to strengthen their own spiritual connections through prayer and respect for traditional ways. The ceremony lasts until nearly dawn. When Henry finally finishes, he tells Thomas something significant. The entity that has been prowling their land is not random in its choice. It has been drawn here by something, either an offense against traditional protocols or the presence of an object that carries spiritual weight. He asks if anything has changed recently, if anything was found or brought to the property. After consideration, Thomas remembers that Daniel discovered an old bundle of items while repairing a fence line 2 months earlier. Animal bones, shreds of fabric, what appeared to be ritual objects buried in a shallow hole. Not understanding their significance, he had collected them and stored them in the barn. Henry's expression darkens. Those objects, he explains, were likely buried there for a purpose, perhaps as part of witchcraft practices conducted long ago. By disturbing them, Daniel inadvertently triggered a spiritual response, awakening or attracting the entity that now haunts their property. Henry performs an additional ceremony over the bundle, neutralizing its power, then instructs Thomas to take it far from the property and leave it in a place he will show him on a map, a location where such things can be safely abandoned. Thomas does exactly as instructed. He drives 20 miles into the desert, finds the remote canyon Henry indicated, and leaves the bundle there without looking back. When he returns home, the atmosphere feels different, lighter, less oppressive. The skinwalker does not return that night, nor the next night, nor the night after that. The dogs emerge from beneath the porch and resume their normal behavior. The cattle spread out across the grazing land, relaxed and calm. Sarah sleeps through the night without waking to the sensation of being watched. Slowly, over the course of weeks, the Yazzie family begins to breathe normally again. Henry visits one final time, a month after his initial intervention. He walks the property again, performing tests and observations known only to him. He declares the place clean, the entity driven away or satisfied. But he warns the family to maintain respect for the traditional ways, to be mindful of what they disturb or bring onto their land, to remember that the world contains forces that demand acknowledgement and caution. The Yazzie family continues to live on their ranch, but they are changed by the experience. They keep cedar burning more regularly, They teach their children the prayers their grandparents taught them, traditions that had been fading in the face of modern life. They have learned that the old stories are not merely metaphors or cultural artifacts. They are maps of a reality that persists beneath the surface of the everyday world, waiting for those who forget to respect its boundaries. The case of the Yazzie family skinwalker remains undocumented in any official capacity. No police reports exist. No paranormal investigators from outside the Navajo community studied it. This is by design. Traditional Navajo protocols strongly discourage publicity around such encounters, viewing silence as both protection and respect. What is known comes from careful accounts shared within the community, stories told as warnings and teaching tools. In Navajo cosmology, skinwalkers represent one of the darkest inversions of spiritual power. They are witches who have abandoned the path of healing and harmony, choosing instead to use their knowledge for harm and personal gain. The transformation into animal form, achieved through forbidden rituals and the wearing of animal skins, grants them terrible abilities, but at the cost of their humanity. They are feared not as folklore, but as real and present dangers, threats that require the intervention of medicine people who maintain balance against such darkness. The Yazzie case demonstrates the ongoing relevance of traditional spiritual protection in indigenous communities, the necessity of maintaining cultural knowledge that exists outside mainstream paranormal investigation methods. Henry Goldtooth's successful intervention relied not on modern ghost hunting equipment or demonology drawn from European traditions, but on centuries of accumulated wisdom specific to the land and the entities that inhabit it. His approach recognized the entity not as a puzzle to be solved or a phenomenon to be documented, but as a spiritual reality requiring respect, power, and proper ceremony to address. Today, the Yazzie Ranch continues to operate. The family speaks rarely about what happened in the summer of 1997, and then only among trusted members of their community. They have not experienced another encounter of similar intensity, though they remain vigilant, aware that the desert holds many things, seen and unseen. Their story persists as one of countless similar accounts throughout Navajo territory, a reminder that some roads vanish not into history, but into a present that runs parallel to our own, visible only to those who know how to look. This story was created with AI assistance based on documented case files. All events reference real investigations and reported incidents.